to you by POWERinU. And POWERinU is a training, coaching, and consulting company with office in the Philippines. And we've been offering free webinars regularly for more than 2 years now, since January of 2019. And our mission is to partner with organizations to enable them to deliver strong business results by enhancing their talent and leadership through value-adding strategic consulting solutions. And now let's go ahead and go straight into the meat of this evening. Let me just very quickly introduce our speaker and our webinar resource for this evening. Our speaker for tonight to speak about how leadership and culture drive successful innovation is Glenn Estrella. He is currently the head of ideation and acceleration at 917 Ventures, which is Globe Telecom's corporate incubator. Glenn started out his journey in innovation as product manager in Globe Telecom in 1996 and has always found himself always at the right time when it came to innovation in telecommunications and technology that had a major impact in people's lives. Tonight, he will share with us his personal experience on why company culture and leadership are integral to driving successful innovation. With that, I'll turn over to you now, and let's all welcome Glenn Estrella.
Good evening. Thank you, June, and thank you for the executive team of POWERinU. And it's good to see everyone. Thank you for taking the time tonight to hopefully I can add value to your learning today. So I'll share now my slides. So Trina. Okay, thanks, Trina. So tonight I'll talk about innovation, successful innovation, and how does culture and leadership play into that. Okay, but before I get into it, I'd like to establish also who I am as far as what on top of what June has shared. So so I have I'm a father and a husband, and that's my family. And I enjoy also as a hobby riding motorcycles. And I've already ridden from Manila to Davao in 5 days. And you'll hear some snippets of why riding motorcycles have to do with what I'm going to talk about later tonight. And I've been with Globe for so long, but I've left Globe several times already, and I've rejoined twice. And I always find myself coming back to Globe Telecom or any of its companies or subsidiaries. Currently, I'm the head of Ideation Acceleration 917 Ventures, and we are a corporate incubator specific for Globe Telecom. In short, what do we do as a corporate incubator is that we build startup companies to disrupt basically and solve problems, major problems, big problems. So that's what we do. Now, in terms of, I've been working for more than 20 years now, and I've always been predominantly in the ICT space, information technology, communications. But I've always dabbled in innovation in everything that I did because of my role as a product manager for Globe and all my other companies that I've worked for in between Globe. So for tonight, so you have an understanding and appreciation of what the format is. What I will share with you is basically what I've learned from formal programs that I've been through with Globe mostly. At least those are the ones that actually had a lot of learning for me and a lot of impact. I will share with you experience from working with the best. When I say the best, not just here in the Philippines or in Globe, but also around the globe as well. I worked in Jakarta for a couple of years and worked with a lot of companies both in the US and Europe. And putting that together, the things that I've applied, how I applied them, and tell you stories of innovation that I've experienced. Okay, so let's talk about innovation first. In the photo, the guy, so obviously you know who I am. I'm the one with no hair. And with me are my Globe colleagues. And the man on the right with the glasses is Clayton Christensen. And he wrote a book called Innovator's Dilemma. And we were fortunate, the four of us there were fortunate to be sent over to Boston to learn from the master himself. And his book, Innovator's Dilemma, you know, it's one of Steve Jobs' favorite books. He referred to it in his, I think, in his biography, his autobiography. And we learned from, I think we spent about a little over a week in Boston for that. So he talks about the difference between sustaining and disruptive innovation. And what's the difference? So in his book, Innovator's Dilemma, which I'll try to summarize as best as I can, and there are two types. So in a sustaining innovation, your problem that you're trying to solve is pretty much understood. You have, you know what it is, right? And it's normally the same problem in a different evolution that you're trying to solve. In terms of the market, you can identify pretty much who your customers are, whether, you know, and the tiers that they're in. You can identify competition, who would be your competition. And you know what the business model is, like how business model means how you generate revenues and what are your cost drivers, right? And where does the money flow and how does the money flow? So you know that. Sustaining innovation is also incremental. Incremental means little or big improvements. Okay. And number four, there's predictability, because a certain degree of predictability, right? You know what your sales forecast is next year for a particular segment of customers, or people who want to use your products, or even people who believe in what you're trying to sell them. It may be an idea or a belief. Disruptive innovation is a bit different. The problem is unclear. It's a mystery, and it will be too much of an ego to assume you know what the problem is. You have an idea, an assumption what the problem is that you're trying to solve. It's a new market. You don't know who the customers are. You probably are not sure who the competition would be, or in some cases, there is no competition probably, which is also a good thing, because it could be a big problem you can solve that nobody's solving. And the business model, again, you don't really know. You'll probably make an assumption what that might be, right? And the innovation is game-changing. Thus the word disruptive, right? It could destroy companies that are in existing today, serving a particular market, right? Or it's a totally new market created. Okay, we'll go into examples a bit later. And of course, in terms of it's unpredictable. You could be wrong in all cases. Thus, in the startup world, it's probably less than 1% of all startups succeed, or at least to become unicorns or $1 billion companies. So in terms of a graphical representation, what that is, okay, if you look at the left in the chart, sustaining innovation is incremental. So if you look at the gradual increase, right, the slanting to the right in an incremental manner, that's sustaining innovation. Okay, you improve your product to address either a higher, as you move up the line. So you probably start at the low quality use of your product and you move up the line, move up the performance. So high performing products, right? Then you get better margins. And it takes a long time to get there, because you're either growing your market base, your customer base, on a slower pace. Disruptive innovation has a tendency, real disruptive innovation normally looks like in a short amount of time, you start at a low quality of use of your product, but you instantly increase in a short amount of time its adoption, and could penetrate that high demand use customers, thereby getting high demand prices, thereby getting better margins, right? So you can easily eat up into the existing market that you're entering in a short amount of time. Okay, what's an example? So I'm sure everybody knows what Wikipedia is. Maybe, I don't know what's the age group here, but I don't know. Maybe the question is, do you still remember what an encyclopedia is, right? So Wikipedia practically drove the encyclopedia business, the printed books of 23 volumes of books, right? Of everything there is to know, basically out of print. I think in the decade of 2010. And if you look at the chart on the left that I showed earlier, and if you look at actual performance of how Wikipedia did, right? There you go, in 08, they shut down encyclopedias altogether in 2012, Britannica specifically. Then Wikipedia just took over, right? In fact, when you search for something now, Wikipedia is your top search result, right? And thanks to Google's reach and vision, everybody has access to information today. Okay. So bawal na yung you don't know, right? So that's the rise of Wikipedia in relation to what disruptive technology means. Another example, also close to our hearts, is how smartphones almost destroyed, or well, I would call it destroyed, but really disrupted the camera industry. I'm not sure, but since the invention of the digital camera, it wasn't as fast. But when mobile phones become more prevalent, and lenses, digital photography got more sophisticated, right? It just overtook, and thus the demise and the disruption of the camera industry, right? As you can see here, from 121 million units cameras sold in around 2009, it's practically like, it's almost like nothing. If you look at smartphones, right? Everybody has one, and everybody could almost afford one. If you talk about certain tiers of phones, right? It's very affordable today. And case in point really is the Kodak moment. The Kodak moment really started out as, how it's a brand, it's a branding for Kodak. I don't know if people remember what Kodak is. So they started out they started out photography with cameras and then moved on to film. They dominated that space for almost, I think not almost, but over 100 years, right? In introduction in 1850. But eventually they're still here. They filed for bankruptcy, but they're still here doing something else. In fact, if you're reading the news, they even went into cryptocurrency, and they took a loan from the US government to manufacture a vaccine for COVID, which is odd. But I think you need to find areas of growth wherever you can. What is very odd and ironic for Kodak really is they invented the digital camera, but they didn't really double down, we call it. They didn't double down on it. They were protecting their film business, right? Developing. They didn't really invest in it so much, right? And they didn't have a view of the future, right? And they were so focused on protecting their business that they just lost it to the smartphones, and they were kind of like, half baked when they got into digital, so to speak, right? Even with the internet, and the signs were there, and yet they ignored it, right? So that's one of the classic stories that we teach when it comes to innovation, right? Another more familiar, more recent probably to the younger generation, is how Airbnb also disrupted, the hotel industry. Perfect example. Same use case, in a short amount of time, they've disrupted the hotel business. In fact, if you look at sales or revenues, right, Airbnb is larger than Hilton, one of the largest hotel companies, right, in the US and in the world. And they're actually way bigger now in terms of market cap. Okay. So what has helped that? The internet has helped that, I'm sure each one of you would have at least tried to book an Airbnb or at least have Airbnb on your phones. Okay, so this is not an example. So this is not a case of theory. It is actual. It is real. There are real life examples. Okay, so these are disruptive technologies that could, disrupt the incumbents. Incumbents refers to the people, to the companies or brands that are dominating the space on where they are today. And it's always some little guy somewhere, that could disrupt at any time, right? And that could apply even to the recent ones like Facebook, right? Instagram, right? What would be that next Facebook or that next Instagram, right? Now, to close up part on innovation, I'll leave you with this, since our topic is driving successful innovation with culture and leadership, right? So Steve Jobs would have said it. Innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. Okay, successful innovation is inherent if and distinguishes a leading company from just a company that follows others, a copycat, so to speak. So we'll close the part on innovation with that. So what are the elements, in this case, culture and leadership, right, have to do with successful innovation? So we'll talk about culture. The famous term that we normally use is culture eats strategy for breakfast. Some have already expanded this by saying culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and midnight snack. What it basically refers to is, in short, is that no one can buy culture. A company could probably have $1 billion more, right, than the other guy, than the other company. They can outspend in terms of their marketing, outspend in terms of their technology investment, but they can never replicate immediately, that culture that drives success. Okay, that's why building culture is important, and nobody has better explained what culture is than Mahatma Gandhi himself. So your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values become your destiny. Okay. So in short, if you read between the lines, right, what you believe in becomes your destiny if you just kind of skip, right? Because in between dictates what you're going to do. Okay. So that's what it means. It doesn't only refer to individuals, right? It doesn't only refer to individuals. It refers to organizations as well. Okay. So let's look at a example of a company called Atlassian. For those who don't know what Atlassian is, it's a tech company, basically. Right? It's out of Australia. And they've outlined 5 values that they believe in, right? And they've said it as it's an open company, which means they basically say what they mean, right? It's open, right? People can say their opinion in front of everyone, right? Build with heart and balance, right? So they believe that what they're building is what they're passionate about, right? And it gives back it brings them closer to what their mission is. Okay. Whether it also initiatives or decisions. Okay. Basically, they don't screw the customer over, right? When they try to do something, they think about what the customer thinks or how it will affect them. Okay. They play as a team. Sounds motherhood, but it always starts with phrases and words. And to express belief, it's normally expressed in words, right? And what they want to do, what they're trying to drive the point here is they don't, they work with fellow Atlassians. They don't work for, so they feel like an owner, right? They feel like they're also an owner of that firm, that company. And then the last one refers back to what Gandhi says, right? If you want to see change in the world, hopefully positive change, a world not filled with hate, right, is be the change you seek. So it starts with you, right? It's simple things like, if you want respect for yourself, then you must show respect for your coworker or teammate, right? So those are the values, right? And then then the next one is, like I said, I will be sharing experiences with people I've worked with, and not a lot of people know. I don't know if people would remember the founder of Viber, Talman Marco. So this photo was shot in, I think it was in Cebu. We were in Cebu for a Globe Leadership Summit, and Talman was there. I met Talman in Barcelona several years prior to this, so I don't remember what year this was. And we were trying to work with Viber, and I met Talman at a coffee shop in Barcelona. And he's a humble guy. We actually still stay in touch over Viber, obviously. He's still, he's still there. And one of the things he said to me was, and he also said this, he was always saying this on the internet: hire the best people and hire nice people as well. What he's trying to say here is, in terms of working with teams, right? So that's a very important, working with people. When you say hire the best people, what he's saying is that you do not be afraid to hire people who are smarter than you, who are better than you in certain aspects, right? Because you can't be the know-it-all. Obviously, you can't know it all, and you want people who are actually better than you and treat them right. When he refers to nice people, he wants to promote a team, obviously, right, that operates on respect and trust. Okay, so that's what building teams mean. Okay, I was in 2016. I attended the conference called Recode, or Code Conference, the older name, and one of the speakers there was fortunate. On that particular conference, Jeff Bezos was one of the speakers. And one of the things, so focus on the text on the left, because I tweeted or Facebook what he said actually in the conference. But basically, what he's promoting is starting in day one requires you to experiment patiently, right? Accept failures, plant seeds, protect saplings, and double down when you see customer delight. The keyword, or the key words here, is staying in day one. What does day one mean? For those who, hopefully everyone has been in a relationship before with someone, they love, they like. Diba yung day one ninyo is parang, wow, like you're in heaven, right? But in business, what it means is, when you start your own business, for example, or your project or your idea, you're so wrapped up in it that you have to repeat day one every day. It's like the problem is fresh and new, right? You're still so wrapped up in it as if it was still day one. Right? So your 200 million customer act as if that is still your first customer. That's what it means to be in day one. There is that urgency, that excitement, right? And it's basically viral within the organization. Another story about culture is, one of the famous things, what kind of dated, because Facebook is not new, was Mark Zuckerberg said, move fast and break things. And what it means is, basically, it's really an aggressive stance in experimentation. Because when you normally do a business and you've been in business for so long, even if it's selling a particular thing online, whether it be chicharron or whatever, or clothing or makeup, you see your results, your sales, you build assumptions and you build beliefs wrapped around it. What normally happens is we get trapped in that and don't leave room for changes in the market, changes in customer behavior, right? Changes in the economy as well. This photo was taken after, I think, several months after we launched Free Facebook. And the interesting story about Free Facebook was, we flew to the Facebook office. I was on vacation in the US, luckily, and I was asked to fly in my vacation, and we spent the whole day at Facebook headquarters, developing what has become known several years, 10 years ago, roughly, maybe less than 10 years, Free Facebook. And the whole point of doing Free Facebook was, we wanted to bring the internet access to as much people as we can. And we knew we couldn't do it immediately with Google in that sense, because everybody was on Facebook. And most people were using Facebook, where I think 70% were on Wi-Fi, and we wanted them to use their mobile phones, right? So that's what it means. For us in Globe back then, what we broke was, or initially for 30, 60 days or 90 days, we broke our revenue, meaning we gave away our revenue. So we gave it away for free. But in 90 days, we doubled our user base for mobile internet users. And it just took off from there. Everything else followed suit. Top-ups, other people buying our products, and so on and so forth, right? One of the other speakers in the code conference that I was fortunate to do was Sundar Pichai, the Google CEO, when they renamed Google as part of the Alphabet Inc., right, in 2015. And they have this code of conduct that says, do the right thing. It actually comes from what Google used to say is, do not do evil. And basically, the thing that Facebook earlier mentions about move fast and break things doesn't quite capture a sense of what is good, right? And by doing the right thing, it captures a certain moral compass. Okay, you just can't break things, right? Like you can't break the law, right? Or you can't break moral laws as well. So you have to be conscious enough that what you are trying to do, is within boundaries of what is acceptable to us as human beings. Okay. So those are my learnings on as far as culture is concerned. So the question is, are you convinced that culture, as I explained it, is important to the success of your business? Do people believe that? I wonder. I don't know if people are sending messages on the chat. So maybe I'll do a quick look. I don't know. Nobody's okay. Nobody's answering just yet. Okay. So in case you still don't believe, right, if culture is important, especially in business, right, or your organization is trying to make a difference, let's look at stock performance, right? So the best company index, these are the top companies in terms of who to work for. They have performed way better in terms of the Russell 3000. The Russell 3000 is an index of highly traded companies in the US, right? All the companies that are labeled as the best company to work for performs way better in the stock market, right? By more than double. So if you don't believe that, there is again proof that shows that the best companies do win, right? Okay. In terms of Globe, our Globe value is we treat people right to create a Globe of good. And there's so many examples. And the one I would share would be when you land a hit, so our engineers can go out and fix the towers. We sent out people to take care of our engineers' families because they had to leave them so they could fix the towers and the cables and so on. So we had to take care of our people so our people could take care of our service for our customers. The same thing when COVID happened. We took care, it was difficult, but we took care first of our people going to the front line to make sure that we can go out and still roll out services and address customer concerns by taking care of our frontliners, right? Now, how does that translate? This is how you look at the Globe performance in terms of the market. So our Ernst took over in around 2010 or 2009 and built he started basically a cultural transformation. It took a few years because he had to find the people that he needed to lead the company. And by when we hit around 2015, we overtook our competitors' stock performance. So again, another proof that it does work, that culture is important. To close out culture, is a phrase from Brian Chesky, the founder and CEO of Airbnb. Right, the company's culture is the foundation for future innovation. An entrepreneur's job is to build that foundation, basically. Right. He doesn't see culture as soft stuff. It is core, right? It is very core to a company's success. Okay, especially in a startup. If you recall the Airbnb slide earlier, you can see how they propelled themselves to be bigger than Hilton in such a short amount of time, right? And culture is a very big part of that. So that's a leave culture section on culture and that. Now we'll move on. We'll move on to leadership. Okay. So what is your purpose? Right? In 2016, we normally have this annual Globe Leadership Conference. The top 100 leaders of Globe, selected by the CEO, gets to do on a leadership summit. And in 2016, we were fortunate to do it in Tokyo. We were fortunate better to have Simon Sinek, the author of Leader Eats Last, Eat Last, and Start With Why, to be our speaker for that day. He also spoke with us last year as well during the pandemic when he addressed again the top 100 leaders for last year. Okay, so again, these are real. I mean, this is not something you just read that or just Googled, right? These are actual learnings that I've learned from people that gave us the teaching and the learning, and we got to interact, right? Even if it's virtual for Simon, right? So we'll lift a little bit of what Simon talks about in terms of why, right? So the purpose is basically your why, right? Why do you do what you do? So he also defined what a leader is. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, yes, you are a leader. I would further though qualify, a leader also promotes unity, right? Because if you're not, you're the opposite of that one, right? You're not a leader per se. Okay. But most leaders, they figure out what it is, why it is what they do. If I asked you what is it, the how of what you do, it's easy for you to explain, right? Oh, I write code, I do this, I put it together this way, and this is how it works. It's easy. If I ask you what to do, what is it that you're doing, you can explain it. But normally we ask people why, they take a pause, like, I don't know. Some people say that, or they take a few seconds, like, and even if they do answer quickly, with further probing questions, they kind of like still figure out, oh no, right? So you need to figure out that why. So if you're starting your startup, or your startup business, your disruptive idea, you got to figure out the why. Why you want it. Passion sometimes plays around with it because you're passionate about the problem. So let's say your problem has something to do with delivering healthcare to everyone. So if you feel passionate about that, then that could be a why, right? For why you are trying to do what you're trying to do. Okay, so leaders would, mature experience, would normally know why. Or leaders even are younger with a good degree of self-awareness, really know their whys. Simon Sinek would also talk about, good leaders make you safe. And this is something very evident to also what I do in our organization, right? And normally we feel normally paranoid, like someone is always out to get us, or something bad might happen. And that's what leaders do. We want to make it safe an environment for people who work with us, right? Whether it be your subordinates or peers, right? Leaders have a great responsibility. The way I do it at least in my teams now and in the past, is that I make the environment safe enough so they can exercise a certain degree of risk to decide, a risk to make their own decisions, because they feel accountable. And if something blows up, they don't feel like I'm going to abandon them. In fact, for my successful team members that I've trained over the years, I gave them I train them a lot. I spend a lot of time with them, coaching and training them. And when I say coach and train, I'm not talking about classes. I'm talking about real life work, right? Like it's real work. And I allow them to fail. And by allowing them to fail, um, I allow them to suffer just the right amount of pain without getting too discouraged, and the right amount of pain so that they feel the right amount of accountability, and at the same time not suffer the full degree of the consequence. And what it led to was, um, they can make decisions even without telling me, right? And I've blocked, like I've saved like I've saved my people several times for certain mishaps, from the top down, right? Because it's they have to you have to learn fast. You have to really learn fast, especially now at the pace of the internet. Learning fast is a given. If I were to sum up the portion of leadership, I this is my personal lessons on how I do leadership. It's always in the context of working with people. And as leaders, humility is important. Why? Because you can't play Mr. Know-it-all or Miss Know-it-all, right? Because you'll definitely miss out on something. Humility also allows for diversity. I'm not just talking about different religions or race. I'm talking about diversity of opinions, because you might be of the same race or religion or creed, but the way were brought up also has some diversity, right? From the affluent or not so affluent, right? Or even maybe you can compare education, but some are you have a perception they're better educated. To a degree, that might be true, but your own unique experiences is a source of diversity, right? Number two would be leaders build talents. So I spend half of my time. It's hard now in the lockdown or virtual, but before it, I spent as much as 50% of my time coaching, and I build the talent, right? And I don't build kingdoms. I don't build fortresses that I will own, right? You know that's not a good leader when they try to build cliques, or and they're not willing to let go of people they built. And I'm happy that my goal basically is the talents I build will move on to be a future leader and do the same thing with their future people. By doing that, you're able to build trust and accountability, as earlier mentioned. You build that accountability and trust, as I already shared. And what's more important, lastly, is coach and challenge, right? You have to continue coaching, but you cannot coach if you don't challenge and stretch your people. Again, you have to give them something that's not easy to reach. It has to be challenging, right? It's like muscles, right? If you don't challenge yourself to build muscles, then your muscles won't grow. Okay, even your brain and brain cells. So as a parting slide, the picture on the left, I was referring to, at least for the younger ones. I'm sure you can figure out where the younger ones are. The lady on the left, she's 28. I've been training her for 5 years, and we're spinning off the startup we've helped her build last year, and she's now CEO of that company. Right? She's only 28. And then the lady on the right as well, relatively the same age, is now moving on as chief experience officer for another firm, another startup we built. So it's not impossible, especially for the younger generation today, to think about that. And what I always tell these guys, to whom much is given, much is expected, right? If you have an education, much is expected of you, right? If you were blessed by so much, there's a lot to expect. Not necessarily give back in terms of monetary benefits, but share what you've learned, right? And make people better. So with that, I'll end my talk, and hopefully we have time for questions.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Thank you. I hope you can hear me and see me, Glenn.
Yeah, yes. Thanks, June.
Okay, well, wow, Glenn, huh? That's a mouthful. Understanding the role of culture and leadership in driving success innovation. At this point, Glenn, we're actually opening the floor to questions. Regrettably, because of time limitation, we probably have no more than 10 to 12 minutes.
Yeah, sure.
So we encourage everyone to please type in your questions at the Q&A chat box. And Glenn will be more than willing and able to answer them. In the meantime, Glenn, I just could not prevent myself from asking this question myself. If I can take a first stab at it, Glenn. You know, I know you talked about.
I think there's a question in the chat though.
Is there one already? Okay, I'll give way to that, Glenn. Then, all right, I'll turn over to you, Glenn.
Okay, the question here is, what can you say about Nokia's failure to ride on the journey of the various smartphone companies that are clearly leading, right? Given the fact that they were the first to innovate, does it have anything to do with cultural influence? Well, let's just be clear. It's not cultural in the sense that your nationality or your race. It's the culture of values, right? And in my opinion, and again, this is my personal opinion, when you think about companies who have established their names, when you normally become a big company and you dominate a space, you try to protect the revenues you have, and you stick to that belief na you're the best. So the Nokia story is, if you're technical enough, they were so hell-bent on Symbian, right? The OS. And they didn't really, they didn't really explore anything beyond it. It was an OS that they didn't open up. And by when the smartphones started coming in, open source software was already coming into play, Android specifically. And Android was given open freely so that others may build software around that, right? So you have Vivo, Oppo, Samsung using an Android, Google OS. So yes, their values and their leadership, but I think it's really driven by the fact, like, the stories of Kodak and everybody else, that they're so married to their dominance. That's it.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you. I think that question was directed to you, so I apologize. I didn't see it.
That's right.
I did not see that question, Glenn. While we're waiting for the rest, and we still encourage everyone, just please raise your hand, or put a thumbs up, or just type away in the Q&A chat box. Glenn, is there another question directed at you?
Yeah, well, I would assume so. There's a
okay.
The question is for Professor Chiki. How can you apply your topic in the academic setting? A handful of attendees are students. Okay, great question. So 917 Ventures basically builds startups. So if you normally just have an idea that solves a big problem, we're more than happy to listen to you. So last year, we launched a program called Velocity, where we entertain ideas from people, right? And normally they started with one page. They define the problem. They define how big the problem is. They share with us their idea of the solution, right? And we try to help them validate it. So out of over 80 applicants or 90 applicants, we were able to pick 3. So we accepted 3 applicants from that program who applied, and they've been given, so we're an incubator. So we give them capital, money. We allocate funds to be spent on validating the idea. So building the product, doing market research, connecting them to the Globe Network, the Unfair Advantage. And the nice story about that, one of the 3 applicants is actually 19 years old. He's still in college, and he is trying to solve a big problem on access to education because of lack of funds. Okay, I won't really want to speak about that too much, but I think we're actually not super encouraging college students to get into startup, because when you get into startups, you practically give up your life, right? But it is important in terms of the academic, people, when you think about, I don't know what you're thinking about now as college students, right? If I may, and I think this is true, normally college education prepares us to be drones. We're always a jack of trades, right? Unless you become a doctor, or a lawyer, or a code programmer, right? Or design. You need to start thinking about your specialization, right? And what is that you're trying to do? What is that you love to do, what you want to do or solve? So that's how I think it applies, right? It starts there. So innovation always starts with problems to solve, right? At the very least, if you're still in school, that's how innovation is close to you. Diba? They teach you problem solving, right? So that's how innovation is.
Thank you for that, Glenn. It looks like while you did not encourage students actually because of what potential downside it might be to their careers long term or moving forward, but the fact that 917 Ventures has actually helped a 19-year-old student is a promising response to some of those questions that might be occurring in the minds of our students here. And there's a big number of them actually in this webinar, Glenn. So thank you for answering that question. Not sure if you're seeing another one there, Glenn, from
Nope.
where you sit, but
No more.
a question here that I'd like to raise. How should a business leader determine, Glenn, or choose what type of innovation to do? Given your presentation, there may be several options to attacking that, should we say, moving forward.
Okay. It's a pretty much of a general question in that sense. So let's define the term first, business leader. So let's assume you're a business leader of a really large company. Okay. As said before, if you're in sustained innovation, you're still trying you're still trying to improve, right? What your product is and trying to improve your margins, your profits. The warning there is when you look at the bottom tier of your market, right? Be careful who's entering that market, because they may not be the same company that does what you do, right? Like Airbnb, they weren't a hotel, right? They were a technology firm, right? Excuse me, I have to drink water. Right, they're a technology firm, and yet, right, they're bigger than Hilton and all these other hotels, right? So if you're in sustaining business, be mindful of that. Disruptive really just means you're trying to solve a problem. So a good example for a disruptive innovation is Gcash. Because the role of Gcash is, the goal is to to give banking or financial service to everybody. It's so hard to open a bank account, diba? It's so hard. But now with your mobile phone, you can open a bank account and transact, not just buy load, pay your bills, send, get money from mommy and daddy, lolo, lola, or give it to, sweldo yaya driver, or kaya hindi na uso yung pautang naman, pa-Gcash ka naman. Right? So, and they, in their website, it says 20 million users. In such a short amount, well, Gcash has been there for a long time, but it was way ahead of its time, because wala pang smartphone when we launched it, like an odd 15 years ago. But when the smartphone revolution came and when COVID hit, it really became relevant. It pushed it further up into that chart. And now it's disrupting the banks, in the sense that now the banks have to work with Gcash, right? So that's a clear example of disruptive. So think yourself, are you in a sustaining business today as a business leader? Think about it, right? So are you constantly looking at the same customer set, moving up the tiers, improving your product a bit? Yeah, or enlarging your market, then you're sustaining. But you have to know why you're doing it, right? And why you want to do disruptive, because those are different. To fund disruptive innovation is a little different. It's a little different to run. So I think those are the more important call outs.
So the why goes back to the Simon Sinek model of understanding why you're doing it first before the what and the how, right, Glenn?
Yep.
Now, Glenn, you talked about culture, and that's the second key aspect of your presentation in terms of driving success innovation. So is there such a thing as a good or a bad culture in business? And how would you identify, or how would you recognize that, Glenn?
Well, I think there is, in the sense that I don't think there's a right or a wrong in that sense. I think that's right. It's a good or a bad, because bad means, I think you have to define what good looks like, what success looks like, right? And as I explained earlier, there are signs. If you have a good culture, performance happens, right? Revenues, stock prices, happier employees, happier teammates. I think bad culture is the direct opposite of that. And you've seen companies perform, and it's really also correlated to how their revenue performs, right? So I think that's right. There is good and bad, not necessarily right or wrong, because that's subjective. Yeah.
Okay. Glenn, I think we have time for only one question. So we encourage everyone, if you have any question, time is really quickly running. We probably have a couple of minutes left to ask that question and for Glenn to respond. Otherwise, we will draw this to a close. So we did say that we will close this webinar at 8. And unless I see anything here, Glenn, unless you're seeing anything that's been directed to you solely. So once again, just would like to say thank you to Glenn, and really very much an informative evening, Glenn, and we appreciate that. So let me just close as we say thank you once again to Glenn. And he just talked about understanding the role of culture and leadership in driving success innovation. So if we can just give Glenn a virtual applause and truly thank him for what he has done this evening. So I'd like to close at this point, Glenn. So you don't miss out. Hold on. Please subscribe to www.powerinU.com.ph to get updates on events, webinars, and free resources from POWERinU and its partners. We invite you to register to our next free webinar, which will be on April 7, 2021, 7 to 8 p.m. And this time it will be on the simplicity, elegance, and effectiveness of strengths, which will be given by Taffy Ledesma, a Gallup certified strengths coach and country manager for Indonesia of the Hello Health Group. There is an underrated quality of using strengths in development and management, the power to hold an individual or a team to their strengths in order to deliver on objectives. So please join this webinar and understand how strengths can be applied successfully in a workplace today. Everyone who registered in this webinar this evening will automatically get an email invite to our April webinar. So we hope you can join us once again on April 7. Now, a couple of last tabs here. If your organization is facing operational and organizational challenges, and you want to redesign and rebuild your organization's blueprint to success, then know that you are not alone in your situation. And more importantly, you do not have to be alone on your road to recovery. And we offer you a powerful solution because POWERinU, together with Assessment Analytics Incorporated and Gentem Consulting, we have formed a strategic partnership, and we are offering you a powerful solution to help your organization recover and even thrive in these extremely challenging times. Together, we can create a viable and relevant plan for you that will lead to achieving significant results and rebuilding an even stronger business. So please get in touch with us to learn more about this program. And lastly, everyone can access the recording of this webinar through the website of POWERinU, Facebook page, and YouTube channel. Before we officially end, we would like to request about 10 seconds of your time to answer this 2-question poll, which you can see in the chat box right now, so we can get your feedback on this webinar. Just click the link which we sent in the chat box, or you can scan the QR code that you see on the screen right now. Your responses will help us improve further our webinars into the future. And we thank you in advance for your feedback. So once again, thank you, Glenn. Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. And do join us again in our next webinar. Goodbye, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and thank you. Thank you very much.